live, ladies? Oh, ladies and gentlemen, we are live. How about that? So, guys, welcome to a kind of a little overcast Friday, June 5th, 2026. And I hope everybody's kind of unwinding from the politics and elections of the week. We're still having votes being counted in California. And it could well take a while. Oh, you know what? That must be an Amber Alert. Oh, sorry. It's just a some Newport Beach outdoor warning thing being tested. So that's it. No big deal. I just thought I'd let you know. Anyway, I had to kind of gives away where I am, doesn't it? Beyond the fact that I'm my secret outdoor location, where the city of Newport Beach is testing their emergency outdoor response. And I hope everybody gets a nice little, what is that? Cuba A? Oh, how about that? The test is officially concluded. So now we can get back to the matters at hand and not deal with the the sirens and stuff in the background, warning people if, God forbid, a tsunami or something came. But anyways, they call it the Pacific for a reason, and we both know what that is. And before we get down to talking about things today, I want to mention this in passing. The other day, maybe a day or two ago, I'd been listening to a lot of old Squeeze, and they had a really good song called In Quintessence. And every time they would say in quintessence, the only thing I could hear was Republicans. So to make a long story even longer, which I guess I'm entitled to do on my show, to make the long story even longer, I wrote like a 30-second music video for Instagram. And it's on, of course, our website. The Instagram page, Democracy Radio Network. And if you go to the profile section, you'll see a couple of videos fairly recently. There was one from a few days ago called Let's Roll Those Republicans, which is kind of a Chuck Berry rock and roll 30-second deal. And then you'll come to Republicans, which I just recorded the other day. And, I've gotten 350 views, I think, which is way more than I probably deserve or expected. If anybody's inclined to take a look there, they're actually really good. Even my brother told me that the Chuck Berry Roll Those Republicans was like borderline professional. And I'm sure he was kind of exaggerating, but you get the point. It's really good. And the Republicans is I had listened carefully to Chris Difford's structure when he and Tilbrook wrote In Quintessence, and I was able to pinch like the first semi-verse to get it into the 30-second or under category. And I can only guarantee that I think they're both worth the 30-second view. And so if you do it, have a listen. If you want to forward it, forward it. If you want to do whatever it is, just, have a good time and think good thoughts always. And now, as we are sitting here on Friday, June the 5th, we just had the primary on the second Tuesday, right? This is Friday. And you guys know I usually start out talking about the New York Times, the Financial Times. And of course, I'll get to that. But there's one thing that just made me stop just dead in my tracks this morning. And it was the headline now of the Los Angeles Times. And I give those guys credit. They try to walk as fine a line as they can, calling Trump and the Republicans out. But, these days, the truth of the matter is that Trump's moves have really chilled the citizens' feelings about exercising their First Amendment constitutional right to free expression, freedom of speech, what have you. And newspapers have always played a critical role in this, because without them, how would we really know what's going on? And even more importantly is, we have to make sure that what we're being told is, are you ready for this? True and accurate. And the reason I mention that is this headline: Trump without proof. And, isn't that the way he always does things, without proof, because he makes them up? Trump without proof says the California state vote was rigged. And his basis for saying that is that it's Friday, June the 5th, and it's noontime here. So that all the votes hadn't been in and counted, and the longer the votes stay uncounted, the more likely it is that something will happen. Now, the guy has shaped perceptions, but he's still wrong. I heard that I think 25% of the voting population believes that elections are rigged or, I guess, not kosher in some way. And that's just not true. We have great secure elections. I mean, they're we were down to like 0.004 inaccuracy or fraud. That's thousandths. All right. But of course, his deal is that if he loses, it's because you cheated. He couldn't possibly lose. And I think we both know if there's a bigger loser in the world than Donald Trump, we may be a little unsure who it is. I mean, if that guy doesn't deserve a big yellow L on his forehead, I don't know who does. I'll rail against him a little more later. But of course, Newsom and the rest of the Californians just say, things just take time, and we want to be accurate. We really don't care about being fast. We want to be accurate. And you see, the problem with Trump is he doesn't deal in logic or reason. And so you're left to the whims of a lunatic. And I'm going to submit that things hardly ever go well when you submit to the will of a lunatic. And I've got a larger kind of observation on this. And if you don't know history, you're going to repeat it, mistakes and all. Is kind of the paraphrase of the old saying. But I can only think about the only parallel that I really have any historical perspective on is World War II, Germany post World War II. And you had the same sort of Hitlerian consolidation of power, controlling the flow of information to the media. You saw what Hitler wanted you to see. You heard the messages they wanted you to hear. The gloriousness of the fatherland and all this. And they took over the country, took it to a devastating war. 6 million Jews, God knows how many Armenians and others. And how about just Normandy? How many Americans were lost at Normandy? And we wouldn't know about this stuff if it wasn't reported. So newspapers play a really critical role here. And when Trump makes people think twice before they say something, he's effectively won because he has chilled their exercise of First Amendment right, freedom of speech. And it's more or less freedom of expression. But just as a little historical background, there's a reason it's number one in the Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. And the reason it's number one is because they consider it sacred, right? And way back when, if you had a newspaper in Yale, England, and if you wanted to publish an article, you had to have it approved by the king. And if it wasn't approved by the king, you didn't get to write it. And that has a technical term, and it's called prior restraint, restraining the speech or the message before it has a chance to be said. And can you imagine having everything have to be approved? And does it not strike similarities to the Trump administration? Does it not have to be approved before it goes out? Well, there's a reason Trump tweets so much or truths so much, whatever he does, and nobody else does, because he wants to control the message. And his message that he's been preaching for ages has been election fraud. He lost because it was rigged. And keep in mind, there's never been a shred of evidence to support the conclusion. But he has repeated that enough to where it has taken hold in American society. And I think that was, I forgot who Hitler's propaganda minister was. But the takeaway from what he stood for was that if you repeat the same thing enough, it becomes truth. And that's all Trump's done. He's repeated a lie, and it's found its way into American society. Now the question is, what do you do about it now that he's president? And this comes to back to the prior restraint thing. It's really hard to stop somebody from doing something in the states. As a general proposition, we don't punish people until after a law is broken. We don't necessarily punish them before the law is broken. Yeah, and that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Because if you break the law, if you arrest somebody before the crime, you can't do that. You got to have the crime to take away somebody's liberty. So this is just it's just the product of a sick mind is what this is. Uh, you know, Immigrants are always hard work, or not always hard working. There was a guy in Newport Coast yesterday who got arrested for selling like I don't know unreal amounts of computer chips or something to Iran, and the guy lives in Newport Coast. And I forgot if they said the house in a $35 million house, and I think that's probably true. He has a $35 million house in Newport Coast, which is really how can I put this? It has the flavor of Russian dirty money all over it. So whenever you kind of want to have a big spread and not be bothered, like living in the little hamlet of Corona Del Mar, you buy an estate in Newport Coast or plantation, whatever you want to call it these days. So anyway, so we couldn't, we had to let him commit the crime. And while we were able to try some of Hitler's associates for war crimes and have them executed, the truth of the matter is the damage was done. You can't bring it back. So this is a really interesting time for us. I mean, I don't think it ever entered the founder's mind that you would have a less than honorable person, much less a criminal, elected president of the United States. I think it's just inconceivable to those guys. So they didn't even address it. It'd be like like my favorite expression, like the ravings of a lunatic. Um, so the guy is just so dangerous, and we see it every day. And I'll get into some specifics in a minute. But my overall point is that the longer this goes unchecked, the worse it is for the country. And it's not just a day, it gets worse for every day. We get set back a week, a month, a year. When he fires somebody with really deep institutional knowledge, that screwed us for 20 years. 20 years. And the general conclusion is that the Trump administration destroys for the sake of destroying. They have absolutely no interest in what comes after. They're kind of like the Huns that kind of invaded and would burn everything and leave a ruin behind. That's kind of what I am. Not that's what I'm feeling, and certainly what I'm fearing. I mean, the way they rode into DC with the Doge and Musk and the chainsaw. Uh, they never had good intentions. And what do you say about the Trump voters? I keep asking, so what beyond January 6th, or what was it about January 6th that made you think he could or should be president? I mean, wasn't that enough to not vote for the guy or not listen to him or something? And it's back to that when Hillary Clinton made that distinction in 2016 about Trump's voters being deplorable. Well, they generally were. They were in favor of racism and violence and God knows what. They clearly weren't the best that America had to offer in terms of personnel or thought. But Trump latched onto them. And, I guess if you can believe like wrestling is real and the UFC and all that stuff is real, I guess, Trump's lies could be real too. It just depends on your mind. And what I my brother actually pointed this out to me, and that Trump voters have a mental situation where they really cannot process anything negative about their idol. Okay, if anything, no matter how provable it is, you could have it black and white. 60 cases, you guys had a chance to get some evidence, you didn't. You can throw an encyclopedia of undisputed facts at them, and they don't care. And the closest thing that reminds me to or about is the flat Earth theory. I mean, you mean if I could show you a cajillion pictures of the Earth being round, of the view back from the moon that shows you it's round, I can do all this stuff. And here it is. Look at it. And what do you think? I still think the Earth is flat. Yeah, and I wish I didn't have to tell this so much, but that's doubly dangerous because if you believe in something that's not true, you're delusional. Okay, delusional. And let's go a step further. Let's say what you don't believe is readily provable. It's so provable that courts and judges will take what they call judicial notice of the fact, and that's a fact that's so in dispute, so undisputed that the court will accept it, like the sun rises in the east and sets in the west and all that. So after 60 times to present evidence, you guys didn't, and you still believe. Yeah, I still believe. Well, in that case, not only are you delusional, but you're a delusional dumbass. And the reason you're a delusional dumbass is because, on top of being delusional and not believing reality, you're a dumbass because you refuse to believe 60 facts, 60 objective facts that can be readily provable. And all you have is your, I don't know what the word is, your supreme leader uh, just saying otherwise. And you go with that. To me, that's pretty close to deplorable. I mean, that's people get locked up for less. At least they used to before Reagan emptied the asylums. Um, but yeah, I mean, wouldn't you? And you might not put somebody in jail for believing that the Earth is flat. You can put them in jail when they believe Trump was robbed, and that the only way to right the wrong is to break into the Capitol and take it over and hang Mike Pence and all that. And this is a guy that won the election. I'm you I'm always astounded, and my brother keeps bringing me back to earth. It's like, you could have the facts on your side, and they just wouldn't believe it. And my thought was, what if they want a jury? And what if they just, I can't say always, but it's not unsurprising that in big cases to have like one juror hold out and to get a mistrial or hung jury. Um, but this is just, but what if he was on a jury and had to decide somebody's guilt or innocence based on facts testified to in court by witnesses? And I think there's a word for that. Oh, actually, it's a legal procedure where after you lose in court, you can ask the judgment, ask the court, ask the judge for a judgment in your favor, notwithstanding the verdict or something like that. And of course, they never grant it, but you have to make it, or else it's malpractice. So, and this is just, it's dangerous on steroids. And like I say, I'm in Newport Beach. God only knows where you guys are. And, and for every person we know, there's what, 100, 1,000 that, believe just the opposite for no reason. And does that give you are we starting to approach understanding how dangerous and how insidious Donald Trump really is? I mean, if he were out of office tomorrow, I have no idea how we would. Well, I have some idea how we would move to minimize the damage, but forget about restoring the status quo. These people are gone. Uh, I read, and I'll get to this later. I think 20% of the attorneys in the Justice Department have gone, right? And those are the experienced guys and not the young guys. These are the old hands that have all the institutional knowledge. But let me kind of get started on the day's affairs, and of course they are intertwined with Trump because the SOB is just he's treated as the United States president. And I get that, but they treat him as a U.S. president who doesn't lie or cheat or steal or any of that stuff. And I think I say I'm hardly a scholar, but it just seems to me that that whatever he does is just it's just based on a lie. But anyway, let me get back to this. How about this one? This is the New York Times headline today. GOP lawmakers test Trump's grip on his party. They push back on the war and the $1.8 billion weaponization/fund. Jeez. Is that like the bare minimum backbone you would have? I mean, it, it took this long to get a war powers resolution approved, and yeah, it did because it took a while for Congress trying to shake out to see who lost in the primary, who's a lame duck, and who's coming back, and what how things look for November. So his grip on reality, his primary candidates don't, even if they win the primary, they usually lose in the general because they're so extreme. And thank God Trump is too stupid to realize that. Otherwise, he would change his primary endorsements. But he can't, and he can't do that. And I'm going to tell you, I think that Trump is genuinely frightened by anybody with any expertise because, as the smartest person in the room, he claims to have the most knowledge in the room. And we all know that's not anywhere near true. And when you quit depending on experts who have expertise, who have experience dealing with this, you're left with someone who's inexperienced, without any knowledge, and essentially a situation where he just kind of goes with his gut. And that's not disdaining, the American people and government, I don't know what is. Uh, like I said, when he wipes out the experts, who does that leave? Him. And I would submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that as I sit here on this Friday, June 5th of 2026, that's not a particularly good position for the states to be in. But I got to tell you what else I found. Not real, I guess interesting, was John Bolton pleading guilty to having classified documents or mishandling classified documents, I think was the charge. And it looks like from the evidence that I see in the paper that that there was a likely chance that Bolton committed a felony of mishandling classified documents. And I think he kind of brought this on himself, because if you read the reports, you would come to the conclusion that there is enough evidence to suggest that Bolton shared classified documents with his wife and daughter or something. And keep in mind, he's like, this isn't for publication, but you should know what's going on, kind of thing. And the truth of the matter is, crimes exists a lot of times where people want them to exist, right? I'm pretty sure if he went in trial, well, you never know. I'd like to think he would, be found not guilty. But, with people who don't deal in facts, how do you know? How do you know what the outcome is going to be if you can't, if somebody doesn't believe there's 52 cards in a deck, then how do you play with them knowing that, they're all evenly distributed and so on and so forth? Right? So with I mean, it's just a really bad. He's just a really bad guy. But anyway, let's kind of let's go overseas for a little bit, and and it's not it's become really obvious that Hezbollah and the drone how can I put this, the drone advocates clearly have the better part of the argument because the drone as Israel can't is not they don't have a really set way to defend against so many small like mosquitoes flying across the border at God knows how fast. Um, you know, they're kind of like the states. We can handle the big stuff, but we really are put off with this, or not put off, but are stupefied as to how to respond to this asymmetrical warfare. You know, America's the biggest, baddest, so on and so forth, cajillion nukes and all that stuff, and drones are keeping Iran alive. Okay, drone attacks. Same thing with Russia and Ukraine. Thank God those guys are rewriting the book. I'm gonna tell you, I take my hat off to the Ukrainians. I so hope we can do something to get them funded properly. They have just they've been just horribly victimized. They were assaulted by a larger, stronger neighbor, like superior forces, and it's been 4 years, if I'm not mistaken, and they've held out. They have suffered unreal damage to the country, to its infrastructure, to the buildings, to the people. There's you can't just live in a war zone as much as people may try and act like things are more or less normal, or that this is temporary, and if we get through this, it'll be better. Uh, but we suck. I railed against Biden for this, and I know his thought process. I know he just was really afraid of starting World War III, and in some calculated way, determined that that some things could be given and some things couldn't. Instead of giving them everything they needed or wanted right away, and then of course you get the moron Trump who comes in and thinks Zelensky's an idiot and a crook, right? And you gotta laugh when Trump calls anybody a crook. He's had enough convictions and guilty verdicts, and convictions, guilty verdicts, and judge and civil judgments against him. Wink, wink, E.G. and Carroll. Uh, the guy's he just comes at you. Whatever he says is gonna be a lie. And if I'm not mistaken, when Obama met him at the inauguration, and I think George W. Bush was there, and I think Obama slammed him right then as a bullshit artist. And Obama, God, can you imagine having one of those guys back? I mean, I would take Michelle. Hell, I'd take Malia. I would take anyone. Uh, so, so anyway, and keep in mind these guys are testing Israeli defenses, and the whole time they're how can I put this? The whole time they're trying the drone theory, Israel's major military exports are just through the roof. They when you are in a country like Israel and you have no place to go, you defend it like you wouldn't believe. And that's why these guys always have super highly developed weapons, is because they have to stay one step ahead. Otherwise, it's it could be even worse than it is now. But I don't want to get started with Netanyahu being a warmonger, but I think there's enough evidence to support a conclusion. And there's and also in Israel right now, there's a funny thing going on. There's I don't know what you would call them, a group or class of citizens, or anyway, their Hebrew kind of nickname is the Haredim. And I think literally that means like ones who shake or quiver or tremble or something like that. But in practice, what they are is they are ultra Orthodox Jews who believe that the highest duty would be to study the Torah 24 hours a day, 8 days a week. They don't believe in military service, and they just believe in studying the Torah, the Bible. And if you would ask them, well, don't you want to contribute to Israel's defense? They say God will defend. And when you ask them about something else, God will defend. And everything else is God will defend. And in the meantime, you've got compulsory military service for every other Israeli, men, women. I pretty sure it's when it's 18 you go in. Ain't no, you know, you don't kind of go to say, oh, I've got bone spurs. You know what I mean? Israel's pretty. No, they'll find a place where you might be a desk position, whatever it is, but you're gonna serve. And while I admired on that point, because when a country's so small, they really do have to work together. Uh, but in a bigger country, just compulsory service usually falls on the poor and the uneducated disproportionately because wealthy people figure out a way around it or not to do it. So, and because we feel generally detached, especially with the government like it is now. I mean, does anybody in America feel patriotic as they did when, I don't know, how about Obama was in office? Or how about when Reagan was in office? Didn't you feel like you were a patriot? Which is always kind of contradictory because, back then, if you drank a Budweiser and watched a Daytona 500, that would qualify you as being a patriot. Uh, so I should, but yeah, so the Haredi just, so they had this big protest march outside of a judge's house. And I mean, I get it, but, guys, and I've never read the Israeli Constitution, but I imagine it's got a good bit of hours in it. But I just cannot imagine how or why you can be upset about being asked to do that which everyone else does. You got the truth is they had a break for a long time, and things are changing. Demographics are changing, and Israel needs soldiers. And these guys may not be frontline, gun type people. They could probably do some support work in the office and just free up others to do that which is violent and which needs to be done, and which they obviously have no and they have no desire to get into. So the only thing you can hope is that Israel kind of comes through this. Netanyahu, he won't come to his senses, but maybe they'll have another leader relatively soon. That I mean, I'm gonna tell you, I do think that for the longest time, the Palestinians were the pawns of the Saudis and this and the other to punch back at Israel. They really didn't care about the Palestinians. They were the ultimate political pawns. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Yasser Arafat probably had a major hand in that. God, yeah, this Middle East stuff is a little exhausting, isn't it? So yeah, what and Israel's let's see the religious foundation of the world. I mean, didn't everything kind of start there? Well, with the exception of Christianity, I think you might can argue that started like in Rome or somewhere after Jesus kind of pissed off the old Roman guy. Which reminds me, I always tell you guys that people want to remind me that Jesus died for my sins, and I'm like, I don't think so, pal. I think he died because he pissed off some old Roman. Yeah, don't drag me into it. Don't it ain't my problem. And believe me, I do feel like lots of things are my problem, but that one just ain't mine. Okay, so you had people believing, oh well, God will protect, God will defend, and unfortunately, they probably wound up saying that in their graves from 6 feet under because they were overrun because they didn't fight back. Okay, and I mentioned earlier about the Trump administration seeing what the New York Times calls a striking excess of legal talent, and I think out of 10, I think something like 10,000 lawyers left the government, and that's like 20% or so of the. And those I said those were the experienced guys that have been around that weren't going to stand for this. These weren't the new guys. These were the old guys who had the institutional knowledge. And when you combine that with the, I don't know what the word, I guess, one arbitrary because it was clearly planned to some degree, but these staff cuts were just horrendous. I mean, I understand from friends that work on Capitol Hill that DC is changed. It's not a lively, fun place anymore. Uh, Not only that, but there's just been a huge influx of money. Years ago, you could, it was like an Italian section, Italian section, whatever it was. But now it's just gentrified the whole thing with big money. And don't if you don't think Trump knows who's spending big bucks deal on Trump Hotel or whatever venture he's got his fingers into, you're mistaken. The truth of the matter is, the guy, and I keep preaching this. I'm going to keep doing it. The key is credibility. And I think way back when the old Roman Latin days, I think credible meant something like worthy of being believed. Okay. Worthy of being believed meant you were credible. Okay, great. So let's look back at Trump's past behavior to see how it conforms on the worthy of being believed credibility scale. And I think on a scale like 1 to 10 credibility with, or how about 0? How about 0 being no credibility and 10 being, like Jesus like credibility, right? I think he's closer to a 0. The guy has absolutely no credibility. He lies about, and I think just to back it up, let's look at some past history. Past history may not be the best way to predict future behavior, but it's kind of all we have. So as we look back, there's what the I don't know what they were called, but that group of 5 black men in New York that were wrongfully accused of raping somebody, and Trump took out like a full page ad, and and even before that, when he and his dear old dad would discriminate and not rent to black people. I mean, it's just his history and how people go to bat for him time after time. It's just, to me, it's just willful deception on their part and a huge intent or desire to gaslight America into not paying as much attention and not seeing what is actually happening. Because what's actually happening is corruption on a scale that it just boggles the mind. I mean, it just, it's everywhere you look. And it's really funny because now, as I understand, Trump's, the original $1 million bid to redo the reflecting pool turned into a $13 million no bid contract. And as I understand it, the job is really lousy because it kind of looks like a black bottom instead of the kind of natural blue green, kind of thing you associate with water. And are we surprised that Trump would F up? Of course not. It's the way he is. That's why the reality show is so dangerous, because it gave it gave life to a myth, and the myth that it gave life to is Trump is this great businessman. And I've got friends and older friends, and hopefully they're slowing down mentally a little bit, but I've got older friends that are just that will tell me they hate Trump, that they hate everything about him and everything he does, but they still vote Republican. And it's my belief that there are some people that are just so conditioned to acting in a certain way, they do it, whether it's appropriate or not. And I think that my friend has just been so conditioned to vote Republican that he just does it. And of course, that's, without thinking, is usually the worst way to do things. There's a Latin expression that I can't remember, but it's something like unencumbered by the thought process. And when you don't rely on other people's expertise or anybody's expertise and assume that you know it all and you have this divine knowledge that will let you make great decisions consistently. Reminding anybody you've seen in DC lately? I hope so. Oh, and oh, by the way, before I forget, damn, I'll be shot for this. Today is June 5th, right? Well, there are only nine, count 'em, 9 days to get those UFC fight tickets for that White House uh, event. And, I heard, I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard that because Trump was having such a hard time filling it, that a bunch of gay people somehow got tickets and they were going to show up, kind of like, as you can imagine, to make a spectacle. Not making fun of it, but they just want a spectacle. And, I'm all for that. Oh, gosh. Okay. So the excess of the attorneys and the staffs and all that. And of course, the Department of Justice saw the largest decline in numbers. But also, you can't forget what they did to the Education Department, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, that was just a long time in coming, and HUD. Those guys lost tons of staff. So they're not the way they were either. They lost, and those I think those departments lost a greater share of attorneys than you would otherwise think. And now, just to show you how the guy just does not stop. Immigrant voting fraud is rare, but DOJ says they're going to increase the enforcement. In other words, they're going after a crime that's not there. And why are they going after a crime that's not there? Because Trump has convinced them that there is a crime there, even though there's no objective evidence to support the conclusion they believe. Well, I knew a man who believed he had to fart and pooped in his pants. So that's not a guarantee. Uh, anyway, let's keep going before we get really bummed here. Yeah. Okay. How about this? Oh, and how did I not get to this sooner? How about the newly acting director of national intelligence? The guy that coordinates the intelligence gathered by what is it, 12 different agencies? And, again, you would think that just maybe, I don't know, in some idealistic way, that the director of national intelligence would have some background in like intelligence, like national intelligence maybe. But old Bill Pulte has none, no experience. What do you say? He has certainly no experience with intelligence, and his national experience has been kissing Donald Trump's behind. And I'm sure at some point, seeing how far he can get his tongue off his behind just to outdo everybody else. Like, need that. Okay. So, and Bill Pulte, he's the guy that came up with the mortgage fraud cases that were dismissed in court. And the guy's just, I heard some kind of dildo jokes he was making at a function. And I'm just thinking, for God's sake, are the American people happy with this? And I mean, I would really like to see one of those 60s protests in DC. I want to see people that have become homeless from this. I want to see them camped out like on the National Mall, like maybe some of those old Hooverville things. Remember those? Well, nobody actually remembers, but Herbert Hoover was the president during the Depression, and whenever you would have just camps of people with tents, you'd call them Hoovervilles because his policies were not. Uh, he didn't know how to deal with the crash in the market. Now we have some idea. Back then, they had none. And I'm going to analogize the Great Depression to the COVID epidemic or pandemic, whatever you call it. And my analogy is this: sometimes there are events that are so extreme that you really can't adequately prepare for them, which is why if it's somebody's first pandemic, they may not be great. when it's somebody's first mass protest. They may not be great at it. Eventually we get there, but uh, anyway. And how about the January 6th rioter that gets hired in a relatively sensitive position that he has access to national security documents? Uh, and he worked, this is at the Pentagon. The world is just, it's turned on its head. And one person has turned it on its head. Don't think it's a widespread whatever it is. At some point, the buck stops here. And in my opinion, the buck here starts with Donald Trump. Actually, kind of starts with Trump and ends with Trump. We had, and while I always blame Newt Gingrich for initiating the warlike attitude between Republicans and Democrats, the truth of the matter is it had come and gone. But the right wing media network, yes, you Fox, yes, you Rush Limbaugh, you guys kept the thing alive, and you made people feel good. And oh, by the way, if I'm not mistaken, somebody check my memory on this. Oh, I'll check myself later. But I think in relatively recent history, Fox News settled a defamation case stemming from the 2024 rigged election claims, and they paid, I think, the voting system people. Was it Dominion Voting Systems? I think they settled this literally on the doorsteps of the courthouse for, I want to say, it was either 787 or $788 million. Okay, almost $1 billion. Over 3/4 of $1 billion because they lied. Okay, they lied, and so they pay out the award, the 3/4 of $1 billion. And you know what? Nothing changes. It's just the cost of doing business to those guys. Uh, it's just, I can only hope that everybody just manages to hang on. Just at least let's get to the midterms. If by some chance Democrats take the Senate and the House, at least then we have some leverage, some power. But in D.C., if you want power, then do you have the votes? And we don't. We'd like to think we will, but as of now, it's if you don't have any power in Washington, it's a real. If you don't have any power in Washington, there's nothing to stop you from getting run over. And the Republicans have demonstrated this a cajillion times. Their willingness just to run people over and run people over just for the sake of running them over, not for any grand cause, but just because they can, because they're they're perceived as strong guys. And I'm going to tell you, Trump's impression of the U.S. and the world is not what the Europeans are seeing. Certainly not. I read the Financial Times daily, and the Europeans are able to see Trump for what he is. And there was somebody in the New York Times that had the best explanation of who Trump is. And there was an editorial, I think it was yesterday, Tom Friedman, New York Times, and it was something like "All hail the commander and thief." And we all know what corruption that's about. But Friedman made or articulated the true Trump doctrine. You remember that first they went on and on and on about the Monroe Doctrine instead of the Monroe Doctrine, the Monroe Doctrine about how everything in the Western no foreign governments in the Western Hemisphere, which means like no new settlements, which means it's kind of the United States is to deal with. Okay, and Europe had, Russia had the outer hemisphere, we had this one. So what happens now? Trump has them, and The fact of the matter is the Europeans are seeing this exactly as it is. They call Trump's lies out. They've almost gone beyond the niceties of false claims and all that. Uh, the Europeans have never respected us. But let me get back to Friedman for a second. The new Don Road doctrine, according to Friedman, and I can't argue this at all, is that if Trump if Trump hates you, he'll tariff you, right? That's what he does. If he hates you, he'll tariff you. If you're against him, he'll tariff you. But if you need him, he extorts you. Okay? So think about that. He extorts you on one hand and then tariffs you with the other, depending on if he likes you or not. This is without any sort of evidence to base the conclusions of like tariff effectiveness on. I think that there were absolutely no reputable economists who endorsed Trump's policies before the election. They said stagflation would come, which is a range-bound stock market, high unemployment, which is arguable because you never know about the labor statistics until they're revised, and like I say, you have to be concerned about the guy. I mean, anybody that's made a couple of $1 billion extorting people in less than a year is, he's pretty good at it. Oh, and then Friedman also went on and says, let's not forget, he is also the trader in chief. There's been like 3,600 trades or so, some of which are companies his kids or he indirectly involved in, right? Uh, and I think that's like 50 stock trades a day on defense manufacturers or airlines or computer chip people. So 50 trades a day that's a pretty good many. So you've got to have a really decent operation to handle that. And if you have a decent operation to handle that, you shouldn't be in the presidency. I mean, Donald Trump would be so lucky if two things: if he holds up to the end and can pardon whoever it is he can pardon, or if things just kind of fall his way in the meantime. But guys, we really need a massive turnout in November for the midterms because we've got to get some power. Right? Name some places power matters. Matters in Article 1, the Congress, Article 2, the executive, and Article 3, the judicial. So we've got a really tough road ahead. And don't get these guys, they're making a bunch of money. They're not in a hurry to go anywhere. Okay, so I'll quit railing about that for a little bit. And then just to kind of go one step further, how about the fact that they won't let the New Jersey governor visit the federal detention center in New Jersey? I'm sorry, but this woman's the head of the state, or the head of the state of New Jersey. She has a vested interest in making sure that everything that's going on in New Jersey is legitimate and above board, and that includes the operation of prisons and detention centers. And again, it begs the question: what are they hiding? What are they hiding? I guarantee you, they're not hiding, crisp white linen sheets and breakfast in bed. They're probably not even offering room service. Mm. So yeah, and those things are just it's a blight on the nation, and it's not and it's exploited around the world to show how America has declined. This is the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. Well, this is definitely the decline and fall of the American dream. So, guys, let's turn out. Let's give our guys some power. Let's give them the tools they need, and let's hope to God it's not too late. And then as I was almost ready to check out, and I wish I had time to look this word up, but I didn't. And Frank Bruni and Brett Stevens did this little dialogue thing on Fridays. And Bruni is the liberal view, and Brett Stevens is the super conservative point of view. And they one of the things they mentioned was the fact that Trump had gotten rid of a $368 million network of deep sea instruments that collect data about currents, climates, and ecosystems. The National Science Foundation spokesman said that this rollback aligns with the wider strategy to have a nimble approach to prioritizing support for evolving scientific priorities and emerging technologies and all that. And with that hides is the larger issue. And the larger issue is the Trump and Trump's administration ongoing assault against science. Uh, they destroy that network, not for any reason, just for the sake of destroying it. I think if data does not have Trump's name on it, he considers it defective and his to get rid of. And you got people that enable that. Uh, what do? It's really bad when you don't have power in DC, like I say, and sometimes you just gotta wait and hope you get your turn. It's not a perfect world, and the good guys don't always win. And it really hurts when you think about the ideals that this country is founded on. For instance, how about the notion that it's better to let 100 guilty men go free than imprison one person falsely? People would laugh at that these days. They lock somebody up quicker and with no evidence and just a gut feeling. And much like with Trump, gut feelings have a 50-50 probability. Maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, but you can rest assured that there's absolutely no brain power involved here. So, in some ways it's just laughable, and in other ways it's just, you know, you don't know what to say. I mean, I've never seen anybody just repudiate expertise and destroy for the sake of destroying. Um, these are evident. This is evidence of a deep-seated mental problem, and everybody, you guys, or the Trump public thinks it's funny. They're happy to put up with this. They don't see the danger, and of course, they wouldn't look at a European newspaper to get a just opinion or the views of others. And the reason is because they don't really care about the views of others. Keep going back. Their experts are right. Your experts are wrong. And we are going to get rid of your experts. So the only experts left are ours. These political races, at least the presidential races, the extremes that Trump has gone to is really nothing we've ever seen before. And that's the best we can hope to do is prosecute him when he's out of office, because there's not a whole lot to be done in there without any congressional power in D.C. If we had the Senate or the House or something, we would have some leverage, but we don't. Instead it's Mike Johnson, John Thune, and Trump. And just so everybody kind of remembers, Thune, let's see, from South Dakota, North Dakota, whatever it is. But you know what Thune did before he became a senator, which is a pretty cushy job in and of itself. Thune was a lobbyist for the railroads. How about that? And is it any surprise that coal is coming back? I mean, the inattention to science intelligence is just staggering. Everybody still knows that the future is green energy. People know that coal is bad, but Trump uses it for a lie. Oh, coal is great. We'll bring back coal, and oh, here's some money. And if I'm not mistaken, Trump's not seen as the least bit generous anymore, if he ever was. And keep in mind, Trump was so generous that the state of New York wouldn't let him run a charity in it, because when he did run a charity, his charity, he used funds to buy, what was it, a portrait of himself? Yeah, you just can't. That abuses the public trust. And this is, governing is about the public trust. Or unless you're a guy like Donald Trump who doesn't depend on trust, who just depends on intimidation and brute force. And usually that's a sign of limited intelligence, but that kind of goes without saying. Okay. So let's kind of leave that behind. Oh, and we'll go to the Financial Times. And would you believe, just really briefly, that their business section, the Financial Times business section from today, June 5th, 2026, is about the business of Formula One and how it is so international, meaning that everything's got to be moved around, the cars, the the equipment, the spare parts, the testing, the tires, whatever it is always in motion. And when you have things like in the Strait of Hormuz that delay shipping or impede on shipping schedules, or excuse me, are subject to some wild insurance rate premium fluctuations, it's kind of easy to see what happened. So, with that in mind, we do need a little, you know, somebody in there for us. Okay. Oh, and how about this? Just to go along with Trump's generosity, he intends to cut the NATO Rapid Response Force. Now, who wins and who loses? Well, you would have to assume that Putin and Xi win, and everybody else loses. See, because Trump needs those guys for his ego. As long as he can say, "I hang with these guys and look what I do," people might give him some leeway. But as a general proposition, you just don't get a whole lot of latitude when when you treat people as you do. I don't want to be like a karmic Indian, Eastern believer. But the truth of the matter is, Trump's poisoned the well from top to bottom, and it's just a race for fresh water. And it's like that old cowboy country music thing. You don't miss your water till your well runs dry. Well, we're just about there. And I'll cap it off with a couple of financial observations. The first one is AI revenues have to go up 100 times. Get 100 times, and the numbers involved, for SpaceX to get a $1.8 trillion valuation. Now, I don't know how that works, but I will tell you that if Elon Musk pulls that IPO off at anywhere near those kind of valuations, he is the new world's dangerous man. And we chat periodically about the private credit problems. Those are the guys, everything from PayPal to Ford Motor to GMAC to financing your local whatever it is. And what had happened was, as these private credit industry grew and became lucrative, the big traders got in and venture capitalists got in on a lot of these. But what happens now? Things are looking a little sketchy in the private credit market. Well, people want to take their money out of some of those funds and or hedge funds, mutual funds or hedge funds. So you've got Blackstone, which is one of the biggest baddest around, that's limiting the cash withdrawals or limiting their withdrawals from a key fund because of the pressure on the private credit industry. Now, hedge funds are one of those kind of unique investment vehicles that are a real black box, and the manager of the fund can accept or can limit inflows to a certain amount to keep things down, or he can uh, do what they're doing now and limiting withdrawals from the funds so people can't get out as quickly, or they may not even get out at all if the withdrawal limit is capped or zero. So there's real stress in the financial system. I didn't look back since we came on the air, but when I came on, the stock markets looked a little a little hazardous today. And let's see here. Oh, but it might not turn out to be so bad. The Dow is down 700, which is a victory. And let's see here. How about this? S&P is down. How many percent was that? S&P was down 2.64%. So that's like 140. That's almost 200 points on the S&P. That's a big deal. And let's see what that old Nas finished at. Oh, the Nas was down 1,000 points. Jesus. I mean, does that not suggest something's not kosher? So, guys, it's Friday, June 5th, 2026. I'm kind of exhausted after going through the the litany of Trump-related news items, and he's just got his fingers in everything, which means everything's going to go to hell sooner or later. I mean, you can't. So when I asked my Republican friends which bankruptcy exactly was it that made you think Trump was a business genius? Was it the sixth, the seventh? Was it the casino? I mean, what was it that convinced you? So, ladies and gentlemen, in this day and time of massive disinformation, I'm going to kind of beg everyone to kind of decompress over the weekend. And if you get a chance, and I don't know if this is how many people can really afford this, but if you get a chance to read the New York Times Sunday edition, if you get a chance to buy it and take it home. It may take you a week to go through, but you'll be a better informed person. And I'm sure the Republicans have some foul. Oh, is that woke? Is that kind of being it's kind of reading new credible things being woke? Well, in that case, I don't want to be woke because I want to be aware of what's going on. If I'm not aware of what's going on, then I just seem to be senile or something, and that's certainly nothing I want to rush into. So, guys, on that cheerful note, well, why don't we go ahead and wrap it up? Actually, let's take a drink. I'll have a symbolic drink with you before I go because I may realistically have a real one in a little bit. Friday that adult beverage thing kind of kicks in. But for all the men, women at home, and boys and girls, and all the ships at sea. Oh gosh, getting a little congested too. I want to go ahead and sign off for Friday, June 5th. Wish everyone as good a weekend as you can possibly have. Get outside. For God's sake, get outside. Unplug. Listen to your own heartbeat for a second. Listen to the breeze. And take a deep breath because the battle continues. And it's getting more intense the closer we get to November. So, guys, with that in mind, I want everybody to have a good weekend and unwind, and let's get ready to hit it Monday morning. And guys, I keep saying the same thing